Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the August 10th Transit Technical Advisory Committee. Go ahead and get started with introductions. I will read off the names that I see on the participant list. Starting with Drew Nichols from SCTA. I am Dana Ture with SCTA. We have Brandon Thompson with Solano Transportation Authority. David with SCTA, Daryl Halls with Solano Transportation Authority, Emily Betts with SMART, Russ Crenshaw, sorry, thank you, with TDM, welcome. We have Jacob Brown with Golden Gate Transit, Stephen Schmitz, Sonoma County Transit, Matthew Wilcox, Santa Rosa City Bus, James Cameron, SCTA, Joanne Parker, SMART, and David Davenport with Golden Gate Transit. All right, is there any public comment on items that are not on the agenda? When I see Steve Bertelbaugh joining, so I'll wait till his audio connects and see if he has any public comment.
Sorry it took so long. No, I'm interested in the Solano County bus service. I'll probably comment after that.
Great. Thank you, Steve. All right. Well, with that, let's move on to item number 3, which is approval of the meeting notes from the July 13th meeting. Does anyone have any comments or corrections on the meeting notes? All right, hearing none, would somebody like to make a motion on the notes, approval of the notes?
I'll make a motion to approve the notes.
Thanks, Stephen. Anyone, do we have a second?
I'll second. This is David.
All right, thanks, David. All right, so the next item is a presentation from the Solano Transportation Authority on the State Route 37 Transit and Rideshare Program, our pilot. So would you all like to share the presentation, or would you like to do that from our end? Us to do it from our end?
That'd be helpful, Dana. Thank you.
Okay, great.
So Dana, if it's okay, I'm going to kind of kick it off or introduce everybody, then turn it over to Russ.
Great.
Our consultant on this effort. And then most of you probably know Brandon. Brandon's actually zooming in from Charleston, South Carolina on vacation. So doing double duty. So he and I are both on vacation. So we're kind of dressed casually today. So apologize for that. So most of you know that there's a lot of work going on State Route 37. The 4 county transportation agencies, including Sonoma and Solano, Napa and Moran, have been working together for about 7 years to try to plan improvements to both near-term and long-term improvements to 37. As part of that effort, we've also been looking at transit alternatives. You know, as you know, most of you know, there is no transit alternative right now connecting Marin, Sonoma area to Solano via 37 with transit. Obviously, with all the traffic and the flooding and everything, that also makes it difficult to run transit. So we've done some studies. The counties have all kind of been pitching in. We looked at ferry service, rail service, and bus service. So this is really focused on the bus service. We're doing similar to Sonoma County. We're doing a plan because we've got 5 local transit operators, and STA does the transit planning. So we're doing what's called a connected mobility plan. So Russ is with the team with TMD, they're the consultants. And we asked them to look at the 37 corridor as part of that effort. And so we've had a couple meetings with Marin County transit operators. We've met with Soul Trans, who would be our express bus operator. And of course, this is our first meeting with you. So this is still a little bit of a work in progress. We did have to put some writing down because Caltrans, as part of our interaction with them on 37, wanted to get an idea of what the transit service might look like. So we gave them a concept, because without the transit alternative and ride sharing, you're not going to be able to reduce the vehicles miles traveled and have the GHG reductions necessary to do highway projects. So the interim project and the ultimate project are both being planned with transit in mind. So we welcome your input. You can give us input today, or if you want to, Dana, collect a collective comments. That's what Marin did. They went through TAM, and you guys can give us a summary of comments from Sonoma. We'll get those to Russ, and we can try to incorporate that. Like I said, this is a work in progress. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Russ, and then I'll stay on with Brandon to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Daryl. And we would be happy to collect comments. And Russ, if you would prefer to share the actual PowerPoint, we can do that. Otherwise, I'm happy to go through in the PDF.
I think the transitions work better when it's in PowerPoint than trying to center each page in
Okay.
as a PDF.
And I will stop sharing, and you should be able to, Drew, would you make sure that Russ has the ability to share?
Yeah, he has the ability to share.
Great.
There we go. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. Thanks, Daryl, for kind of setting the stage. Just as background, there was a previous study that was done not that long ago, and what we were doing was building off of that work. The previous study, based, no surprises here, it's a low density dispersed travel demand situation along the corridor, especially to the west. It changes as you get east. The three largest trip originating cities were Vallejo, Fairfield, and Novato. And each of them has a high propensity for transit use. And by that, the population demographics, the densities, and the other characteristics that lead to a stronger likelihood that people will use transit were present in those cities. That study concluded that there was demand for fixed route service between those cities. Ride sharing was already significant and would benefit from more park and ride locations, as well as the priority treatments along SR 37. The semi-fixed route minibus service they had proposed, they considered to be viable. So in looking at the draft plan, there was a need for on-demand connections from home and work to mobility hubs. And this kind of mirrors a trip. And again, part of our work on this project, but also on a larger project for STA, is to kind of help redevelop things around stronger corridor services, but also to reinforce the opportunities for connected mobility, basically extend the reach of the corridors into the communities from both a home access and work access standpoint. Develop mobility hubs in the communities to provide the connection between both local transit, but also a host of active transportation options for people. When I talk about local transit, this can be fixed route as well as mobility on demand. Looking at the fixed route express service that would be operated from Vallejo to Novato was the original alternative. And the competitive ride sharing platform that's necessary in this day and age to kind of facilitate more, rather than just kind of pre-planned ride sharing, also looking at the opportunity for casual or on-demand ride sharing. You can see various modes that connect in. Okay, alternative one, there are two alternatives that are in play at this point. The first one focuses on Novato. Again, all-day service connecting Novato with Vallejo using zero-emission buses with inductive charging, and looking at the future HOV operation with direct access ramps, making transit faster and more reliable. And you can see, on the right, the mobility hubs that are currently proposed, possible, either existing or possible park and rides, first and last mile mobility, And then kind of backing up the system, the guaranteed and emergency ride home programs in both counties. So as we look at alternative 2, not hugely different. It's got the same all day, all week service. The focus here, though, is connecting from the southern part of Marin County down in San Rafael, running up, and you can see, as we look here, taking advantage of Marin's program already for online stations on the 101, coming across on the 37 with a proposed stop here at Mare Island. That is on both, and actually hiding under the P is another park and ride mobility hub. And then lastly, ending at the fairgrounds in Vallejo. And again, very similar program. You've got a few different ones, Vallejo, Mare Island, Black Point are all similar to both. And then we've got the other park and rides on the 101 as it heads down towards San Rafael. So if we look at the draft plan for ride sharing is currently high. From Solano County to Marin, it's 27% to Marin, 30% to Sonoma. From Marin, it's 52%, 29% to Solano County. When we first saw this, we were a little quizzical. That's like pretty awesome numbers. We've gone back and checked it. This is based on the replica LBS data. It's from earlier this year, and I've had it pointed out that it's not counting vehicles, it's counting people. So from a ride sharing standpoint, if you've got 15 people in a van, or you've got 2 people, 3 people, 4 people in a car, that's how these numbers get very high, because it's the total number of travelers, not vehicles. So when we look at how carpooling and van pooling will benefit from the program, some additional park and ride intercept locations, we've got mobility hubs to add connected mobility. So from a ride sharing standpoint, you don't automatically have to get picked up at your house, but you could get picked up at mobility hubs if you wanted to bike there, get dropped off, a variety of alternatives. And then the new, mobility as a service, the MaaS technology can dynamically match riders with trips. And that's frankly very exciting as we look forward. And then lastly, the planned HOV lanes will provide pooling with a competitive advantage. So not only does transit use that, you've got pooling, so the shared ride concepts will have a significant advantage with the HOV lanes. Lastly, the mobility hub investments. And again, we do a fair amount of work in this, and we tend to think of these as not just glorified bus stops or even transit centers, but they really start to involve community placemaking. So they become kind of an integral part of the community as you move forward. So as we look at these, we've got a couple of major investments, the Vallejo Fairgrounds Hub and either downtown Novato or San Rafael, which San Rafael actually has a fairly good program that we would want to augment a little bit more moving forward. Running zero emission buses on this, this is going to require an inductive charging network, and that's something that's already underway at STA. There are 8. If you count them, the purple one at Curtola also counts as an inductive charging location. It's the pilot location. So again, looking at the transit partners, we'd need to extend this, across to Marin or Sonoma, as we move forward. So taking a look at the plan, we can see that they're not very different. We have identical kind of service spans, frequencies, trips. San Rafael will take 1 more peak bus. The total bus requirement with spares, we're adding 1 bus to each on the assumption that this is not a unique fleet, that whoever operates this is going to be part of the greater fleet in operation. So you can see revenue hours, there's a difference, revenue miles. The cost using escalated numbers starting in 2026 would be somewhere around 2.3 million a year for Novato to 2.9 for San Rafael. And again, on the right and the bottom, you can see kind of the capital cost, what the assumptions were there, moving forward. So I think, with that, are there questions? I'm sure there's plenty. Thanks for listening through the whole thing first.
Thank you so much, Russ. Are there any initial questions for STA on the presentation?
I have one. This is Steve Ertelbaugh. Do we anticipate that the funding for this can be covered by the toll that's imposed on the segment B between Mare Island and Sears Point?
Well, so Steve, this is Darrell Hall, STA. And there's obviously a discussion in the legislation that Senator Dodge carrying, Senate Bill 1050. One of the eligible expenses is transit capital and transit operating. So that this plan is designed to start giving some definition. The one comment we have gotten from Golden Gate and Soul Trans is the annual operating subsidy may be a little low because the time frame for the interim project, again, if funding is available and we're able to deliver the project on time, is the soonest to be 2026. So our plan is to have transit alternative ready by that time. So when we open up the new lane, we can also provide the transit service for equity purposes and alternative purposes. But the answer is, yeah, I mean, the toll, and I think James Cameron's on the call, but there's a range what the toll would deliver or provide. And it far exceeds the cost of the transit operating. But this would be one of the benefits of having a toll, is you'd be able to provide a transit service, because I don't know, I can't speak for Sonoma, but in our county, we don't have extra operating dollars to run expanded service. We're just trying to sustain and restore service. So this is a plan for the future. And if we want transit service, that's one of the near-term benefits of having the interim project, is that we'd be able to have transit service for the whole corridor.
Great, thank you. Emily, did you have a question?
Yes, hi. Let's see, I'm interested in hearing more about, I think, what factors you'll use to decide between the two alternatives. I was in the meeting with TAM last month discussing the options, and I believe the STA planner there said that the travel demand north and south from 37 was pretty even at this point. And so it was hard to use that as a determining factor, but clearly we're talking about 2026. So I'm just wondering what the time frame is for narrowing down the alternative. When do you need to have that set in stone, and sort of what the factors are that you're looking at? I mean, is price going to be the driving cost, or how's that going to work?
Well, I think the best answer I can give is we're going to put that decision in the lap of Marin. That's why we've had 2 meetings with them. So we had an initial concept that TMD had, which I think is option 1, Russ, if I'm correct. And then they came up with option 2. They're both options right now. So we've got time. We're not rushing it. We're just trying to create definition and kind of keep this going forward so that we're not rushing, 3 months before the lane opens. And so we've got plenty of time, but we do want to get some consensus. And as Steve's comment earlier is, we have consensus. We're going to include that in the expenditure plan, because the expenditure plan is being developed for 37, and this is a component we're trying to give definition to. But I think the simple answer, as long as it makes sense. I mean, part of it's ridership. It's also logistics. Where can they handle the buses? There's
Right.
Nancy Whelan's been very involved in the transit operators, as you know. So we're kind of listening more than we're dictating. We're just saying, here's some options. And from our perspective, we've already done the stationary planning. We've already got fairgrounds, which is already designed. We're tied up in RM3 litigation, but if we get RM3, we have money to deliver that project. So we can be in construction less than 6 months. So we're already planning all these efforts on our side. But as you know, this is a corridor plan. So we want to make sure marine operators are comfortable. We put Soltrans down because a lot of the commuters in the morning are coming from Vallejo and Fairfield. So the logical point is you start there and then go back. It doesn't mean that we couldn't have some collaboration. And as you can see, it's silent on Sonoma, because that's what we're looking for you guys, is to kind of populate that part. Is yes, we'd like a stop. Where would the stop be? You know your commuters in your county better than we do. So that's why we're kind of laying this thing out and say, here's the draft concept. What do you think? What would you like to see in it from a Sonoma perspective? Do you like one of the two alternatives, Marin, better than the other one? Would you like to have something in Sonoma? We're literally very open-minded right now.
One more question. In the slide that had the mobility hubs, there was sort of a nice picture of what a mobility hub could look like with bikes and stuff. Yeah. Is this something that's anticipated to be built and budgeted as part of this process?
Well, if you look at the slide on the right, we put down $1 million. That was just a placeholder. We know what the cost is in the 360 development because we've already designed it, budgeted it out. We're working with the county and Vallejo, and there's going to be parking supporting it. And there's a major development called the 360 development that's occurring. So we work with the developer. What we need is definition on the Marin Sonoma side is we know you're going to need some resource. So what do you need to do? If you guys have your own plans going on, we're open to that. We're trying to wrap up our connected mobility study in about 6 months, because there's other stuff we're doing in our county. So if we can't wrap it up in 6 months, we'll just kind of do a placeholder, say here's where it's at, and then as you guys start to populate it, we'll have more definition. But if you have some specific ideas on access or a hub, there may be an idea in Sonoma. Now's the time to bring it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just one more comment. I mean, I almost wonder if the alternative 2 is selected, whether there could be some coordination with the transit center relocation project, because all of that mobility infrastructure is going to be reviewed and reinvented, right, in this one location that you're considering connecting to. So there might be some synergy there.
I mean, with the second meeting we had, we heard positives of both options. There's pros and cons to both, and I think it's something that TAM and SMART and Marin Transit and Golden Gate and others need to kind of come together and decide what you want to do.
Thank you.
All right, Steve Bertlebaugh.
Yeah, my other question has to do with whether we really need to wait for the HOV lane to appear. The idea of a queue jump at the beginning of the 2-lane segment could put transit at the head of the line and make it feasible to deliver transit. I understand that the eastbound queue jump would have some problems because it's at the intersection of 121. But I think that could be dealt with pretty early in the process, much long before we would get the HOV lane going. Has any thought been given to the queue jump approach?
I may defer to James, but I think, Steve, one thing you're forgetting is we don't have the operating to run the new service. Without the operating, you don't have no service. And all the transit operators in the Bay Area, including the North Bay, are very tight on their operating. They're trying to sustain services as they are and bring back service that was cut or reduced. So that's the challenge, is we have to have a revenue source, and that's what the toll provides us, is it gives us both a capital revenue source and an operating revenue source. James, did you want to comment on the queue jump stuff?
Yeah, my audio just dropped off on the question. I only got the first part of it, which was the viability of the project without the carpool lane. I missed the Q jump question.
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I was speaking to the fact that you could put Q jumps in now before you add the HOV lane. And that would allow this to begin sooner than 5 years from now.
I'm not clear on the viability of this without a carpool lane. You know, Daryl mentioned the funding component, but in addition to the funding component, just to be able to incentivize users, you know, you need to provide something that allows them to, you know, not sit in the same traffic that they would be sitting in as if they were in a bus, right? Or if they were in a carpool. The document that has closed comment period that would add the carpool lane from 121 to Mare Island does include pretty significant extensions of the carpool lane beyond the lane drops that exist out there now, and that the lane drop will continue for the general purpose lane, right? And you'll have a through lane for the carpool. So when you look at 121, for about, it's a little over a half a mile, around 3,000 feet west of the intersection of 37 and 121, that carpool lane would be extended. In the other direction at 37, there will be, I'm not sure, at 37 Mare Island, I'm not sure on how far that, you know, Q jump opportunity exists, where you're going to try to extend the carpool lane beyond the lane drop for the general purpose lane. But there will be some benefit provided. It still will not be the benefit of the entire carpool lane.
So the bottom line is you got to have the bridge built and the toll in place before we can begin to start service. Is that correct?
I would say so,
You know,
yes.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
can understand that.
And I think we
Yeah.
can get some benefit for ride sharing, but transit service isn't going to start without the toll.
Okay, I'd really like to have an off-lane discussion, and I wonder if I can get a copy of the PowerPoint to use with some of our groups here.
Yep. So Dana, you guys have a copy, right?
Yes, we do. So there is the PowerPoint, or the presentation is in the agenda packet. And we also do have a copy of the PowerPoint version if you need that for some reason.
Okay,
But yeah, that is in the agenda. And you know, Daryl, I'd just like to get a better sense of the time frame for collecting comments from operators in Sonoma County and getting those back to you.
Well, how long would you like? I mean, we have time. Like I said, the study that TMD is doing is going to go for, I mean, they're working on other stuff. And so that's still happening probably through the fall, right, Russ? So if
Right.
you guys want to take a couple months, Dana, and put together some comments and just send them via Brandon, he'll get them to Russ, and then we can incorporate them. But unless it's something dramatically different. But if it's a location or stop, you know, whatever you guys like to see, or any comments on the Marin locations, let us know.
Okay, that sounds great. You know, I may want to put a deadline out to the transit operators, and then maybe have one more, another chance to discuss anything that comes up at our next transit TAC meeting.
So you think maybe by the end of September, that'd be enough time?
Yeah, absolutely.
That works for us.
Great, thank you.
All right, guys. So,
And
so
Are we going to be commenting on this PowerPoint, or was there a draft study or document that went along with it?
well, the study is still being developed. I think the PowerPoint's what we have right now.
Okay,
We haven't spent a lot of time analyzing it because we want to get the concepts in place, not do a lot of work, and then have Marin say we don't like any of this. So it's really, it's a little different us planning transit service in Marin County or Sonoma. Typically, we focus on our county, so our stuff's pretty fleshed out. But we just put some concept out there to get you guys talking about it, and And you guys may need to spend some more time studying it. And that's totally understandable and appropriate. Like I said, we want to have something in place that we're all comfortable to say, yeah, this is generally what we're looking at. So when we're advocating for 37 and trying to get state and federal dollars, we can show we've got a transit component with all the transit operators on board. That's my collective goal. So Soltrans is on board in our county, and my board's on board, but we want to make sure you guys are comfortable with it. So, and I don't know how much definition we want to put into it now versus if we can kind of say, yeah, this is what the service will look like, and maybe it goes to Somerville or goes to Novato, or maybe it stops in Sonoma. It's all fine. But the key right now is we're trying to attract state and federal dollars. So this is really important part of that.
I have a couple questions. I know you've been working with Golden Gate separately, but on the funding for the service, just so I understand, it's a line item in RM3. Is that?
No, it's SB 1050. Senator Dodd is carrying legislation to authorize tolling on 37 corridor between primarily the Marin section and the 121.
Okay.
One of the eligible expenses is bus service, capital and operating. So
Okay.
that and Golden Gate asked that question at the Marin meeting. So we're not trying to take from ARM 3 is already going to express bus. Now theoretically, there is an express bus category. It could be eligible for that, but it's going to have a lot of competition.
Well, and that was exactly why I was curious, because even our Richmond Bridge route, which serves two much stronger transit nodes, if you will, on each end, has very mediocre performance. So, I would envision. But sorry, is somebody talking?
I think they're muted now. Sorry.
For this particular corridor, I would envision, if it were competitive, that this would probably be towards the bottom of the list. So
what I would argue, it doesn't have a strong nexus to the bridges. And so that's ARM 3. And so we get operating dollars for ARM 2 and ARM 3 also, and we have the 80 corridor and 680. We share your concerns. So we've been operating as, if we get to tolling for 37, we're tolling people to improve 37, both short-term and long-term. Part of the equity and part of the GHG and VMT reduction is transit service. So it's eligible. It is being tucked in with the interim project, the ultimate project, SMART, mitigation. And James and I could go through a whole narrative list, but we got it in the legislation and we wanted to create some definition.
okay, that's good. Yeah, I was just worried that if this had to be competitive, that it would probably not be competitive. So it's good to hear that, there's that enabling legislation. That was our intent, is to have, if the legislation gets approved this year, which is looking pretty positive, it's already out of the Senate, it's moving through the Assembly. So it gets signed this year. We can then say, this is the transit plan that we developed. And all these partners are working together. We still have time. You guys have time to weigh in. And there'll be some policy questions. Let's call it, Dennis Mulligan was raising some questions at the first meeting, kind of similar to you. Where's the money coming from? Right.
His first comment was the operating looks low. And it's like, that was Soltrans comment, but that's part of the, everybody wants more money.
Yeah.
James and I are going to say the funding for the interim project's low. And then others are going to say the funding for mitigation is going to be low. So that's, what it does show is that there's a need for the toll to create the benefit, so that we can do a comprehensive corridor. That's what I'd like to do.
A question on the nodes. Golden Gate has some historical experience running in this corridor. Sonoma County Transit took that service over from us for several years. Is the intent, so I know when Sonoma County Transit took over the service, they dropped the stop at Black Point. So it's nice to see that's back in, since the stops are somehow still there. And I just looked on Street View and they're not even overgrown, which is amazing. But is the idea, first is the idea on the Sonoma County part of the route, is there a possibility of adding a stop on the Sonoma County portion of this? I just want clarifying, for Golden Gate, that's not really a concern, but I'm just for the Sonoma County operators in particular.
Right now, we've not made any recommendations for Sonoma County. This is the first time we've introduced it. Obviously, the trip endpoints are mostly Vallejo and Novato, Fairfield and Novato, but on the west end, it's more diffuse. I mean, on our end, it's mostly Vallejo, Fairfield. On your end, it goes to, I mean, if you look at a list, Novato is the most frequent, but it goes San Rafael. There's a whole bunch of lists. And how do you connect to Sonoma? So if Sonoma wants to get a stop, they need to speak up.
Right. Yeah, and it sounds like it would be potentially expensive, right? Because there's no pedestrian facilities currently out in that middle segment of the 37 corridor, at least that I recall. But there's also not really development, so I don't know if a bus stop at Lakeville Highway would be particularly beneficial. But I would defer to SCT and others on that question. But I just had a comment on the Marin side of things. TAM has a study that came out recently looking at kind of modernizing the Highway 101 infrastructure. You know, the bus pads are an antiquated design that's really not up to modern standard. So if the second alternative is picked, there might be a potential for like a mobility hub at the Ignacio location. You know, that's an area that we've found in that corridor that has that linkage. It's part of Novato, even though in that alignment the route goes to San Rafael. So there might be a potential there to provide a connection in Novato and then also have the bus continue south to San Rafael. And the TAM proposal, you know, has some bus stop realignments and stuff as part of the modernization at that location. So there could be some sort of potential opportunity there to invest this project with that project, only because the San Rafael Transit Center project is such a large scale, long-term project. You know, the $1 million could get lost in there or something at some point, depending on how things go politically. So there might be an opportunity to have maybe an easier investment. Just an idea. I'm not saying that that's, you know, the direction anyone wants to go, but that opportunity is there.
Well, so David, we've laid out option 1 and option 2, and you're starting to discuss them. So that's perfect.
Yeah.
But you're going through some of the discussion we were hearing before. But like I said, we're trying to stay out of that a little bit and say,
Right.
okay, we can agree we get the bus to this location. Where should it stop? Why? And you have the arguments for and against.
Yeah.
I think Steve has his hand up again, Dana.
Yeah, Steve, go ahead.
Do you cap Steve's questions, Dana? Like, is he limited to 5 at a meeting or?
Depends on how much time you have, Daryl.
Okay.
So my question, or another question is, to what extent are the ridership numbers involved with ridership if train service begins, let's say by 2035 instead of 2040?
Well, I don't think, Steve, we've got that far yet. So the ridership analysis we have is what Russ showed you at the beginning. NAPA did a kind of initial look at it to say, is this even viable? Because, you know, again, not every corridor is ideal for transit. So it said in certain instances it is viable. I mean, it's not going to perform like a 101 or an 80 because there's just not as much traffic, but it does have the alternative. The challenge with SMART, because there was a feasibility study done by SMART. We all supported that. Look at, was it feasible from an engineering standpoint? There was not any analysis on this corridor for ridership, so that needs to still happen. So we don't even know how the ridership potential for the section from Novato to Sin City. We know it's feasible engineering wise, but we don't know the ridership potential. But you know, again, part of this, you know, our county is open to SMART. We're planning a rail station at Sin City. That's the Solano Rail Hub. So we've planned for SMART, so we've not precluded it. But there's just a lot of questions we were going to have before SMART's ready to participate at the same level. This is probably could be implemented quicker. It's a little bit more, it's more tangible in the near term. And I think if we're going to do the HOV lane, we would not be very forthright if we also didn't plan transit service and have that opening at the same time. That's your benefit. It's your ride sharing, your transit alternative. So we're just trying to line up the planning so that we've got those alternatives. So when the interim project does open, we get the full benefit of the interim project. Because as you know, there's still a debate going on of interim versus ultimate. And I think everybody, the 4 CTAs are supportive of the ultimate project, but we see the value of the interim project for reasons like this discussion today. We don't want to wait 20 to 30 years to have a transit alternative. So we'd like to have the transit alternative in hopefully 4 to 5 years.
I think one of the issues that hasn't really come into play yet is that the Air Resources Board is looking for a 1% per year reduction in vehicle miles traveled in the state as a whole. And to what extent will that play a role in the shift to transit on this corridor?
Well, it's definitely affecting it. We're seeing the push from the state. That's why you see electrification being proposed here. That's why we're proposing express bus, ride sharing. All those ingredients are critical because people still have mobility challenges. They still have to get around. And if you don't have alternatives, the only alternative they have is they drive their car.
Yeah.
And so part of it is technology. There's more electric cars, more chargers being planned. That's why these mobility hubs are ideal, because you provide bikes, pedestrians, electric chargers, inductive charging for buses. That's kind of us planning for the future, because all the transit operators are required to be doing this kind of planning. So we're working with our operators on electrification. And so we've identified that, our intent would be that this would be an electric bus corridor if the technology is there. I'm sure David can tell you the challenges of electric buses long distance, a little easier short distance, but technology is catching up, and hopefully in 5 or 6 years, this will be the norm, but we've got a plan for it.
Yeah.
That actually reminds me of a question I had, which is, has STA decided definitively on inline charging, or are they still open to other alternative fuel options?
Well, we're aggressively trying to do inductive charging. So we're partnering with BART. We're like a lot of folks that, the big Bay Area discussion, we're running into challenges. For one, it would be helpful if the state picked one technology and everyone bought in, or if the region did the same thing. We are starting to do some very initial exploration of hydrogen, like Contra Costa is. But my board is very committed to alternative fuels, just in general. So we're supporting EV chargers. We've got a program for that. We're supporting electric freight and electrification for transit. But as you know, David, there's a lot of challenges still.
Yeah, I know. We were looking at end of line charging, not inline charging. Sorry, that's not the technical term, but charging in our yards. And I don't know if maybe it just hasn't developed as far as we'd like at this point in time. I know it's only 2022, but we've started to reconsider maybe having to put fuel cells back on the table as a solution for our long haul service. But it's just too soon to tell.
I think the timing of what MTC and the Air District trying to pull together, I know some of the operators are talking about it. I think it's good, because the more we can share information, the better, because otherwise we have 27 operators in the Bay Area, and we're all going in different directions with the same goal. So the more we can get some consensus regionally and at the state, I think will be really helpful. That's what I'm seeing. And I'm not the transit technical nerd, but I'm hearing my staff, Brandon and others, talking about some of the challenges we're trying to implement, grants that we have, and there's a lot of money available, but if we don't have a clear path, we're going to waste a lot of time.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. Just one random comment, since it was kind of sprung on us a few months ago, and then there was a follow-up recently. Caltrans just wrapped up the California Intercity Bus Study, CIBS.
Yep.
And they did identify a core bus corridor from Novato to Suisun City. Presumably it's in there, as sort of a shorter term option to a long-term smart extension. This, route obviously is basically that. So my question is, on the east side of the route, is there a potential in the future of maybe going beyond Vallejo to fill that gap we already run the red line. Okay.
This is our most productive run. It goes from Suisun City to Fairfield, and then it goes to Fairgrounds.
Okay. Oh, so there'd be like a time connection there.
Yeah, and what that route does though is it then connects to Vallejo and goes to BART, El Cerrito BART. But what we're envisioning is you could have a couple versions. One would go to Novato, one would go to El Cerrito.
Okay,
But it's already that's our most productive route we have in our system. It was productive pre-pandemic and it's even productive now.
great,
A lot of essential workers using it.
definitely. Yeah, I know that's the way people currently come to Marin.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
All right, I see a question from Stephen Schmitz.
Yeah, thanks, Dana. Hi, everybody. I was wondering if the toll legislation would provide funding for bus stop improvements or park and ride development.
I'm sorry, Steve, you cut it out a little bit. I didn't quite hear your question.
I was wondering if the toll legislation would provide funding for park and ride development or bus stop improvements.
Well, that's what we're trying to define. So that the legislation, and James can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it's changed because we helped insert the language. It has express bus capital, which I see as being buses, but also some of these mobility hubs. So we put a placeholder for $1 million in Marin without knowing what that would be. We want Marin to define it, and they may want to grow it. If you guys have a stop and decide that you want to support that, and again, that's a capital improvement. So I think the only question would be, or concern would be, don't deviate too far off 37. If it's not an endpoint of the corridor, if it's something like up this corridor here, everybody wants money, but the toll has to be linked to 37. So that's my only comment. But I think that's what we're trying to do through this plan, Stephen, is define what are the capital costs and what are the operating costs, and then we want you and Marin folks to help us populate that part.
Yeah, what David alluded to earlier is to establish a bus stop along the 37 corridor in Sonoma County will take some funding. So
do you guys have an idea of what cost is?
I'm just asking the question at this point. I haven't even
Yeah.
thought about where the bus stop might be needed. Potentially Sears Point, potentially Lakeville, probably more likely Sears Point, with folks commuting down from the Sonoma Valley area, potentially to catch the service.
Well, that's why we're raising this today, Stephen, is so that you guys start thinking about it, and if that's where you guys come up with, we're open to that.
Thanks.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Daryl and Russ and Brandon. Does anybody have any last questions? I think we should probably get moving through the agenda, but if there's any last quick questions. All right, great. Well, we will have another discussion about this at the next Transit TAC meeting, but in the meantime, if you have any comments, you could direct them toward me and I will start collecting them to send over to Solano Transportation Authority. So appreciate all of your time. Thanks for the presentation today.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
You too. All right. Next on the agenda, under regional funding, item 5.1 is the just an announcement that the SCTA funding program will be brought, the discussion on the OBAG 3 program will be brought to the Technical Advisory Committee at the meeting this month on August 25th at 1:30 p.m. So all of you who have projects submitted to proposed projects submitted to that program, please join the Transit TAC on August 25th. And I don't know, David, if you have anything to add to that announcement.
Yeah, so the recommendation we'll be taking to the TAC will be on the color of funding really for the projects that were previously brought to you for your review as part of the communities checklist, and also the overall program projects, including projects that are going to be funded through Sonoma and our other funding sources. So we should have a recommendation for the TAC at that point, and we're looking forward to your input.
Great, thanks, David. All right, the next item is on the, we have a question from Joanne. Go ahead.
Hi, guys. It's not really a question, just a FYI that the raise application awards have been announced by the state senators and the Windsor project did not get funded. So we'll be working on the next round of funding with the state, probably.
Great, thanks, Joanne. Sorry to hear about that.
Joanne, did you happen to hear if there are any California projects that were awarded?
There are. I'll forward you the Padilla Feinstein press release. High-speed rail, bunch of stuff down south, SF Muni, and then in Huffman's district, rural tribal up in the Smith River. Small, like 1.29.
Unfortunately, the Windsor grant wasn't awarded. I'm sure that was something that probably scored pretty high, right?
Yeah, our feedback from the prior round was there were no flaws with it. Please apply again.
All right. So item 5.2 is the Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program. We would like to touch base on next meeting and updates for cycle 5, and then also have a discussion about priorities for cycle 6. So, and David, did you want to touch on anything about our meeting schedule next week for the cycle 5 project?
Sure. So just as a reminder, we scheduled a kickoff meeting with Caltrans Division of Rail Mass Trans next Wednesday at 11 and forwarded the invite to our recipients, Smart, City Bus, Sonoma County Transit, and Petaluma Transit. So we'll be going over, I think, the grant procedures and the allocation timelines for those projects such as Smart and Sonoma County Transit that want to have an allocation request right away in October or December to move forward on early projects. And I think we'll be talking about the master agreements that all of the non-Smart operators will still need to do with Caltrans to receive the money. As a reminder to everyone, please do not enter into any contracts or extend any expenditures until the funds are allocated by the California Transportation Commission, or else you won't be able to get reimbursed. So always have to make sure you get that allocation request completed before you try to expend any funds. And yeah, I think that's it for the meeting next week. I know we have had some discussions previously about priorities for the next round of TIRCP, but I just wanted to see if anyone else has any input on potential projects they might be putting forward in the next cycle. And I think we all want to maybe do another joint application again, because it seems like was a success this time around, and maybe we get some other partners like Golden Gate Transit to join us this time.
Oh, thank you, David. We'd definitely be interested to have that conversation. Our timelines might be, we've been a little farther off than a lot of the other North Bay operators, but I think by the coming year, we might be in a better position.
I think we could probably continue this discussion and keep it on the agenda if it makes sense to just keep talking through ideas on this. All right, anything else on TIRCP? All right, let's move on to item number 6, the transit integration updates. So regarding the transit integration project in Sonoma County with Sonoma County Transit, Santa Rosa City Bus, and Petaluma Transit, the update I have is that we have hired a project manager to lead the phase 2 implementation. Who will be starting later this month, and will bring her in to meet all of you at the next Transit TAC meeting, and really look forward to getting this phase 2 of that project going. And let's see, I've been out for a little bit, so if any of those 3 bus operators have anything to add, feel free to jump in. And if not, I'll just open it up if anybody has anything they'd like to discuss about greater transit integration work going on at the regional level. All right, maybe not this month. All right, let's move on to transit operator updates. Smart, would you like to start off?
I knew you were going to start with me for some reason. I don't know what I have. I've been in a COVID fog for a couple of weeks and just coming out of that. Ridership, I would say, is steady, not increasing over the summer, but we're hoping with school starting again that we'll see some increase. We took a concept for a microtransit service at the Sonoma County Airport station to our last board meeting. We don't have a firm plan in place for that yet, but I think we're going to be doing an RFP for microtransit software services and a contractor in the next couple months. So I'm trying to design a model that can be scaled up along the corridor and that we can partner with the different transit agencies as it's appropriate. So that's exciting, and I'll keep you posted on that. I don't think I have anything else right now. I'm looking forward to talking with you maybe offline about bike share once you've gotten caught up on your emails, Dana. I know you want.
Yeah, absolutely, and maybe I'll give an update after after all the operator updates. Emily, I would actually really like to talk to you about the microtransit concept, and maybe we could do that offline as well. But yeah, if you have information, maybe I could also look up your presentation to your board and get more information. But generally, what kind of time frame are you looking at starting service? And
we're hoping to get an RFP out in the next few weeks. So, I mean, that'll take time. We're definitely going to have to take it back to the board. I don't know the time frame. As soon as we can. This fall sometime would be great. There's been more and more attention to the lack of connection at the Sonoma County Airport. You know, that's every station has its own unique needs. That situation in particular has a lot of attention as a tourist issue, right? Tourists arrive at the airport and then assume that they can get to the train station, and they can't. So there's a little bit of different energy around that than there is just a normal commute connection, especially given the rise in tourism post-COVID. The airport is seeing a huge increase. They have like 150,000 more people flying out this year than they did even pre-COVID. So we're getting sort of attention on all sides of this issue. But there's also, you know, many office parks in that area and homes and stuff. So we're hoping that if we create a shuttle, it will also be used for commuters. But yeah, we can talk offline. You could definitely find my presentation, but it's more of a what is microtransit presentation for the board. So I'm not sure how useful it would be to you, but yeah, I'm happy to answer questions now, or we can meet about it separately.
yeah, are you looking only at microtransit, or are you also considering like a subsidized TNC service?
You know, all of the software companies we've been talking with have the ability to layer TNC services on top of the microtransit as additional capacity, right? And the advantage of that, I think, is that it helps get around the ADA issues. I mean, as of now, the North Bay doesn't have enough wheelchair accessible vehicles in their TNC fleets or taxi fleets to offer just a TNC partnership. But I don't know about that. And that's not our priority right now. I think that would be a nice added benefit once we get this sort of up and going. But there's other issues, you know, another one that was brought up to me, which I hadn't thought much about, was drug and alcohol testing. I guess if you use any federal funds towards TNC partnerships, the lack of drug and alcohol testing for the drivers is a big issue. So anyway, that's complicated.
All right. Thanks, Emily.
I do have a quick question, Emily, since you mentioned it. Is the idea with the microtransit to have that run just when Sonoma County Transit's bus service isn't running, or is it a layer on top, or is there a coordination effort on that end as well? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's more like a layer on top. I mean, we have been talking to Sonoma County Transit for the past year about that connection there and whether there's any potential for improving it. Right now, they meet around 5 trains per day. And we did add all their time store schedules and everything. But I think, you know, for the average tourist with their luggage who isn't familiar with the area, to take the train there and to get off and then walk, you know, depending on which way they're going, if they're going to the airport, they have to cross the street and walk a fair way up to the bus stop and then wait maybe 20 minutes. It's kind of asking a lot for a mile connection. So I think they're serving different markets, honestly, but yeah, we'll have to work that out with them.
Gotcha. I haven't used airports. I didn't know that the local bus stop wasn't really terminal side. So good to know. I could see that being very unattractive. Yeah.
Yeah, westbound, it's not a direct connection.
Gotcha.
All right. Thanks. David, would you like to, and Jacob, go next for Golden Gate Transit?
Sure. On our end, ridership is flat on bus over the summer. Hopefully we'll see an uptick once school goes back into session. But you know, the commute market really hasn't changed significantly over the past few months. And so, you know, absent, you know, a London Breed decree that everybody shall return to the office, we're not anticipating a significant uptick at the moment, which is good because as with any transit operator, you know, staffing up is a challenge. Ferry ridership has definitely improved over the summer. Some of that is attributable to the more recreational service that we now provide, such as to Angel Island. Also, the weather is good, which is nice, so that always helps get people out onto our vessels. In terms of service, we do have a schedule change on, what is that, Sunday, September 11th. And we'll have some minor schedule changes on our service to Sonoma County, but no routing changes there. The only routing change we have is in Marin County. We're going to start running a couple early morning commute trips from San Rafael down into San Francisco. And those trips will make a stop at Larkspur Ferry Terminal en route. And this is really early morning, you know, around 5 a.m. Before ferry service starts for the day. Really intended to serve those handful of people, especially in finance, who work on East Coast work times. And that's been one of the few new requests for service that we've received recently. So that's about it on our end. Also, there will be some minor schedule changes to that route. As far as I know, Emily, all of the connections from Smart in the morning are still fine. But I guess, you know, once it's out on the road, we'll see how it goes because, you know, things can always happen. It's not a perfect system since our buses are on mixed streets along with everything else. Jacob, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I don't think so.
So I think that's it from us.
All right, thank you. All right, Stephen, would you like to give an update on Sonoma County Transit?
Yeah, the big news from our front is that we've we're going to have new schedules effective on Sunday, and introducing a couple of new trips on the 60, some express trips from Cloverdale down into Santa Rosa. And so that's some new service that has been requested up in that neck of the woods, and we're able to accommodate. So we're excited about that. And then, as with everybody else, we're starting up our school tripper service, and extended our Route 26 out to Forestville, which feeds through Sebastopol and down into Roanoke Park and Cotati. And we finally have our real-time bus arrival system back up. Next Bus was out last week and swapped out our DCUs with the new 4G finally, and so we've got 5 buses on Next Bus again. So only took a couple months. We're back up. It's about all I've got.
Great, thanks, Stephen. On those Route 60 express routes, is that how many runs a day is that?
It's 2 trips south and 1 trip north.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right, Matt, would you like to give an update on Santa Rosa City Bus?
Sure. Just like Stephen noted, we also have a schedule change this coming Sunday. It's a kind of a paradox because we're reducing service from our published schedule, but it's an increase in service from what we've actually been running. Because over July, we've had to reduce service due to staffing. So we think with the new schedule that we'll be putting out, that we won't have to go on like a week by week basis of reducing service because of driver issues. And we have drivers in training. So hopefully in the near future, we can reestablish some of our service and get it back to pre-pandemic levels. So not necessarily anything revolutionary in the Bay Area. Our ridership is actually doing really well despite the cuts. We had 23,000 more riders this July than we did last July. And our youth program continues to be a large chunk of that ridership. So, and with school starting next month, we expect another big jump in ridership. And that's about the big news for us right now.
Great, thanks, Matt. All right, I'll just jump in here real quick and just follow up on what Emily mentioned about the bike share program, the partnership with Marin County and Transportation Authority and Sonoma County Transportation Authority. Some of you may have seen in the news that the vendor that we have been working with over the last 2 years, 2 plus, has gone out of business. So it's really unfortunate for our program that we've all been working hard on. We are in the process of figuring out what is next, and we'll certainly be bringing updates on that as we figure them out. But that's the kind of unfortunate news, and a program that we thought would be launching in the coming months is off the table with that vendor. So that's the unfortunate news there.
It's been interesting since I live in the city that actually had the bikes out on the street. Luckily, we're not seeing the bikes, tossed into creeks or anything at the moment, although that's a risk. So the good news for TAM and SCTA is at least you didn't have anything on the street.
Yes, starting and then having it pulled is harder than not starting, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, we've been we've been in touch with the city of Richmond as well about next steps and collecting bicycles that are out there. So.
The bikes looked nice, by the way. I never rode one personally because I have my own electric bike, but we'll see if maybe somebody will be able to take on that equipment and then you guys can move forward with that. But good luck.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So, all right, let's go on to, let's see, I got all the transit operators, yeah? Okay. Other business comments and announcements. All right, so just real briefly, Janet Spillman was on, but then had to drop off. But she was on because she did have an announcement. I'm sure most of you have heard that she is retiring from SCTA. And she was on to say wave goodbye to everyone, but this Friday actually will be her last day. So if any of you did not know that, I'll give that announcement. So yes, we will miss her here and hopefully see her around. Does anybody have any other comments or announcements? All right, great. Well, thank you all for your time, and we will see you next month.
Thank you.